Hi there, it's Craig here, and welcome back to Vinyl TV. Hello there, how are you? Okay, it's been a little while. Got some questions and answers for you today, as I promised. And I also did want to announce that I did receive the turntable from Fluence. And so I'm going to be taking a look at that very, very soon. I'm anxious to get this out there so that you guys and gals can see it for the first time, perhaps. Okay. So, but I did ask you to pose me some questions, and so I have some here, and I'm going to go through them. I don't know how many I'll get through today, but we'll see how it goes. And if I don't get through them all, I'll do another video and get more out there for you. So that's it. Let's go. First question we've got. Let me see here. Okay, this one's from Vinyl Oz. He says, Craig, could you please explore the topic of whether first press or first issue, at least including represses, versions of a record are sonically superior to other vinyl versions? I believe there are cases for and against it, and would be great to hear your views on the topic. Okay, all right. Let's talk about this, okay? Now, there's a lot of things that go into how good a record is going to sound. When it was pressed, well, there's some factors there that might play into whether it's better if it's an original pressing or whether it's a repressing. So let's consider those factors. An original pressing is going to be, pressed from the original master tapes when they were first recorded and fresh off the machine. Okay. So no degradation, no problems with dropouts or anything like that. And no dubs or no generation loss. The original masters pressed onto the lacquer disc, which makes the records. All fine and good. Whereas a reissue, I'm in studio mode, by the way, today, sorry. A reissue may be pressed from a copy of the master, which may involve a generation loss going from tape to tape. Or it may be that, the master tape, if they did get their hands on it, sat around for a number of years and maybe lost some of its magnetism. That happens with tape, Not a lot if it's stored properly, but it can happen. Or, some things can occur with a repressing that may take the audio away from the original master, Okay, so there's that, and a lot of people are worried about that. There's also if maybe it was digitized. Oh no, there's that word. All the purists out there would hate it if it was digitized, okay, and then made a record from that, which I really don't think is a problem. I mean, come on, folks, we're cutting this onto a piece of plastic. Do you really think that having it properly digitized in between somewhere is going to make a difference? Come on. But there are purists out there. It's kind of like a kosher versus non-kosher thing. It's like you've got two kitchens, man, and there's no door between them. And that's it. It's either kosher or non-kosher. And if it's, and so that's kind of the way it is. I mean, separate buildings even, if it's touched anything digital, it's automatically out of the game as far as when, a lot of the purists, the analog purists out there. So, which, that's more of a philosophy, I think, than an actual, thing about audio quality, because I highly disagree that digitizing something properly changes the sound at all. So, but, there's a whole other video, okay? So let's go back to this. So basically what I'm saying is, sure, if it was taken from the original master and, they made a recording of it on a vinyl disc and they did, distributed it, that's the original. And there it is, okay? Now, what if, though, technology has advanced? And, back in the day, that's all you had was records, right? I mean, tapes and stuff, but records were your main source of music distribution. So there was record plants all over the place, and they were very interested in producing good quality products because that's what the product was. Boom, there's your record. And everyone had to be happy with the quality, or else it went back and was done over. That was the deal. Whereas today, you make a repressing or a reissue, and it's like, well, the originals are still out there. Plus, you've got the CD. Plus, you've got some high-resolution copy of it. It's always possible that there's just better technology today, and they want to improve upon what came out in 1975, right? They think that they can do better now, and they've got better quality vinyl and better cutting machines, better lathes, better everything. And, they can do it much better. They can space the grooves apart more accurately now because computers, right? And everything. So, maybe today's iPhone is better than 1975's iPhone, if you pardon the comparison. Of course, there were no iPhones back then. I'm just saying, technology has gotten to the point where, we can do things better now in a lot of cases. So the conclusion I would render here is it depends. And there really is no definitive answer whether an original pressing is better than a reissue. Okay. Then there's the whole thing about remastering too, which that's a scary word, isn't it? Because what does that mean? What did they do to it? I mean, what was wrong with it in the first place that they had to remaster it? Or is that just a marketing thing where they can say, well, I tweaked like something so minutely that you can't even notice it, but I remastered it. So now we can say it's a remaster and we can reissue it and everyone's going to run out and buy it because it's remastered. It's new. It's better. Remasters aren't always better. So, they're not always better. They can be worse and they can be compressed and, again, removed from the original intention of the recording. So that's or there are times when it can be better. They can actually improve on what was, what happened back then with technology. So, again, very loose topic here. I have Rush reissues that I have and bought a while ago. They sound fantastic. They were cut to metal instead of lacquer. So they were direct metal mastering, I think they call it, and it's and then some of them you and then they can stamp the records out with those instead of using the lacquer, which is soft and can lose some of its shape, and the grooves can get softer, and these metal discs can make better copies of the thing. So there's that. Plus, sometimes they'll master it at half speed. The record spins at half the speed so that the cutting head can get in there and get all those little vibrations in there. There's pros and cons to that too. So much can go on. In any case, whether it was back then or now, you just have to listen and decide for yourself what's better. Unfortunately, and we'll get into this in another question, buying records is Russian roulette. Unfortunately, that's part of the game. When you decide to get into vinyl, you better be prepared to be disappointed at times, because you will be. And other times you'll be thrilled to ribbons. You gotta decide. And the other thing is, can you find a really good copy of Led Zeppelin 4 on vinyl these days, an original pressing? One that's never been played or that's in such good shape it's almost mint? Can you find that? Because come on, folks, that record was played to death. It was played at parties. It was played at, people were smoking and drinking and spilling things. Try to find a great copy of that record or any record like that, that's in good shape, and compare that to a repressing, a reissue. Then you're talking. But if you're going to take a scratched up old, refurbished, whatever, cleaned record, a classic rock album like that, and put it up against a brand spanking new reissue on, 180 gram vinyl, you got to take more into consideration than just the audio quality. There's the background noise too. And I think I'd rather listen to a quiet record that's been tweaked a little bit away from its original form than a scratched up original pressing, to be honest. So there's a lot to consider there. I hope that handles your question. Thank you. Okay, this one's from Philip Ketchum 1407. And he's wondering where I went. He says, the main thing I'm looking for before jumping back into vinyl is how to know what mastering to purchase. It's way too deep and time consuming for me to try and learn the names and companies. Would love to find out if there is a resource to access for more useful info before purchasing. I quickly became discouraged with recordings that sounded terrible. Not willing to just toss money away like that, and don't really have a problem with streaming. Okay. This question is kind of similar to the last question, so I think I can abbreviate this one a little because a lot of it is similar. You know, if you don't know a lot about mastering engineers and different people's names and different studios, different cutting facilities, things like that, then you're kind of out in the dark. And most of us don't really know. Some people do. They can say, oh, that was so-and-so that did that one. That's going to be good. Or so-and-so did that one. Don't bother with that. Most of us don't have that all in our heads. So in this case, you're really, it's Russian roulette. Now, there are ways that you can try to find out. And first of all, you can go into forums. Let me just look here. I have a couple of places that you can. I'm sorry, I have to turn away from the mic. Okay, I'm seeing here Steve Hoffman forums. That's a website. Try that. I haven't been there. I got a list here, a small list of places you can check. Apparently, there's one called Vinyl Collective. You can try that. You're just going to have, I don't know the answer to this question. That's what I'm saying. That's basically what I'm saying. You're going to have to do some, if you're that worried about it, and I haven't really been worried. I have a couple things here that I bought that I just very unhappy with. I actually bought a Michael Jackson Thriller reissue, and I didn't pay attention to where it was mastered or anything like that. It's brand new. Wow. Because there's another one that's hard to find a good copy of. And brought it home, and it just sucks. It's terrible. It's got nothing. This lays there. So it's bad. And I'm sorry I bought it. It was $40. Also, Discogs. You can check Discogs. I know the website. I have an account there. I'm not extremely familiar with it because I don't use it a lot, but it's there, and it's the deal, right? And you can usually look up records and get reviews on different masterings and pressings and whatnot. Also, just forums and stuff. And you're just going to have to dig around. Read. Amazon's actually a good place to, even if you don't want to buy it from there, which I don't mind buying things from there. You can, if you find the album on Amazon, look up the reviews on it. Someone might have some things to say, right? So that's the answer to that question. Really, I can't help you with it much. It's not something that is easy to do. It's a very difficult thing to do, is to, figure out which pressing plant, which mastering engineer, whatnot. If vinyl is going to be that stressful for you, maybe it's not the best thing to get into, because there is that. Okay, there is the Russian roulette aspect of it. And unfortunately, there's not a lot you can do about it except try to do as much research as you can. The other thing you can try, and I've just started doing this, is this AI thing, this Chat GBT or Bing. I think Microsoft has Bing. You can ask it. Say, I want to buy this record. I'm interested in what's the better, just ask that thing. Ask that chat bot thing online. And I've used that for a number of things, actually. And boy, it's pretty good. It goes out and gets everything, and it brings it to you and explains it very well. So some people are afraid of that, but if they're going to use it for whatever they're going to use it for, you can use that to find out stuff. And believe me, I've found out a lot of information from that. So try that. Okay, this is from Boxer, TYS. He says, Craig, it's great to see you back for, I think, the third time. I never really went away. I I'm busy. I have lots of stuff going on, but here we are. And he says, there is something I'd like to know your opinion about. I have a Denon DP 790W turntable from 1978 and a project, depending on where you live, a project debut Pro turntable from 2021. And for me, the Denon sounds nicer with the same cartridge and stylus. What do you think is better to have, a new turntable or a vintage one? Or is that hard to tell? Well, Boxer TYS, I have 4 turntables. Does that answer your question? Look, a new turntable doesn't necessarily mean it's going to sound better. Again, this is kind of related to the other questions. You can buy a brand new, wonderfully, packaged and nice, brand new, smells good and everything, turntable. And you might have a 20-year-old one that sounds better. Now, you're saying with the same cartridge, this is something I've talked about before, and I got a lot of flack, so I'm going to be careful here. The cartridge on a turntable is like a microphone. It's like this thing here, okay? That is crucial. If I put a different microphone on here, it's going to sound different, right? Now, the turntable, like the tone arm and the platter and everything, that's like the stand that the microphone is on, all right? Now, if I tap the stand, you're going to hear that. So the stand might influence the sound of the microphone because the microphone's attached to it. And I'm talking, and not only is the microphone vibrating and picking up my voice, but the stand is also vibrating, right? And I mean, to a certain degree. I mean, I can't feel it vibrate, but it's the same idea. Now, a stylus, a phono cartridge is working at a lot less, voltage. It's a much weaker signal than a microphone. So the vibrations are, they're pretty small. And it wouldn't take much to have the tone arm, if it's a bad tone arm, interfere with that. But if you were able to put your finger on the tone arm while the record is playing, you might feel it vibrating a little bit along with the record, right? Along with the grooves. In which case, that can end up influencing the sound because the cartridge is going to pick up those vibrations. That's the idea behind this whole different turntables, same cartridge, and you think it sounds different, even though it's the same cartridge. To me, that's never happened, but people say it does, so let's leave it at that. Okay? It wouldn't, for me, it wouldn't be a big difference at all. And some of it could be placebo. Like this turntable just looks better than the other one. And I like it better, and it feels better, and it looks better on my stand. And listen to that beautiful sound, and don't mind my sump pump in the background there. So you have to do what's best for you. You have to use whichever turntable you like. It doesn't necessarily have to be the newer one just because you bought it, right? Whatever sounds better to you, that's what you use. Or you can be like me. I have several turntables. And they're all hooked up. At least these two are hooked up all the time. And I have a third one that I can throw in if I feel like I need to. And they have different cartridges on them. Now they're identical turntables, so don't even try to tell me. I mean, they're not identical, but they're much the same. If you put the same cartridge on each one, I don't know how easy it's going to be to hear the difference. But I've got I've got 2 different cartridges on each turntables. So sometimes I feel like listening to one of them because I want that cartridge. And sometimes I feel like the other one because I want that cartridge. And it depends sometimes on the record I'm playing. But they're both hooked up and they're both good turntables. I mean, they're Fluons, so those are good. And you just use whatever you think you like the best. And if the old one sounds better, well, there's your friend right there. And the new one, well, you spent some money on it. Just give it a chance. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, I don't think you can break in a turntable, but you'd be surprised what people say. So yeah, just you use whatever you like the best. That's all. And it might not be what you might want to use the new one, but then in your heart you're going, I like the old one better. Okay, so you've got two turntables. If one breaks down, you have a backup. How about that? Okay, this one comes from Hard Kickin' Group Germany. And he says it's a little long-winded, and I thought it was slightly hard to understand, but let's see what we can do. The biggest difference between analog and digital is that analog doesn't know bit depth and sample rate. So therefore, it doesn't have a maximum frequency. The frequencies just go on forever, even if they're inaudible for humans. Now, I've got things to say about that for sure. Okay, he says, because of vinyl having a noise floor, the sample rate and bit depth must be infinitely high to place every level and sample 100% correctly, but digital can't differentiate frequencies caused by the noise floor. The pops, the clicks, the crackles, or if it's part of the music or an instrument. So if I'd use 48 kilohertz and 32-bit, I only can capture that much of frequencies, and that involves the noise floor too. Now, this is a little confusing. Let me see what I can do. Okay, okay. First of all, when you say analog doesn't know bit depth and sample rate, okay, whereas digital obviously does. Okay, let's talk about that for a minute, because that's, in a way it's right and in a way it's wrong. Let's not talk about bit depth and sample rate, because those are digital. They're quantized, and they can be defined as a number, right? So 48 kilohertz, 32-bit sampling, or 24 or whatever. You can throw these numbers around, and that's a whole other video. Analog doesn't have definitive sample rates or bit depths or anything like that, but it does still have limitations. It has the same limitations that digital has. Okay? The only difference with that is that digital, it kind of cuts off, right? There's only so far you can go with digital. It hits a ceiling, and then that's it. Beyond that, you're screwed, man. Forget it, right? Analog kind of tapers off slowly when it starts getting close to its limit. Now, what causes analog to have a limit? Well, the density of the material or the substance that the information is being stored on, for instance. So in the case of an analog tape, there's particles on the tape that store these little bits of magnetism, and the smaller the particles, the higher the frequency they're going to be able to hold, because they're closer together. On an analog tape, you've got, it's moving along, and you've got sort of stripes of magnetism. And the closer together those are, the higher the frequency. Okay? Those can only get so close together before they start to blend, and then you're finished, you're done. So to say that analog has no limit is wrong. It does have a limit. Think of a photograph, okay? A digital photograph and an analog photograph, okay? A digital photograph, you zoom in, you zoom in, you zoom in, you start seeing the little square pixels, which are actually not really square. That's just the way they're displayed. But you start seeing the individual elements of the picture, and that's it. You've hit the limit of that photograph. Now on film, yeah, the granular resolution on the film has a limit. There's only so many particles per square inch of stuff on that film that can store the information. So you zoom in, you zoom in, you zoom in. You don't see individual pixels, but the picture gets blurrier and blurrier until there's no more detail left. So it's more of a gray area. Like analog kind of starts to get worse and worse and worse as it reaches its limit. And then once it reaches its limit, that's it. Whereas digital, it's great until it reaches its limit, and then boom, it's cut off. So you can't just record infinite frequencies on a record, because then that means that these little vibrations on the groove would have to be infinitely close together. And we all know that that's not possible. So, and the stylus can only track such small information. So especially in the inner part of the record where things are smashed together a little bit more, the higher frequencies, the little wiggles in the groove are very close together. And if your stylus isn't small enough, it won't be able to get in there and read all of those. It's just going to ride right over top of them. That's when you're going to get your splatter, your sibilance, So, that statement's wrong. You can record, if you run a tape at 60 inches per second, you could probably record very high frequencies on that tape. Technically, you could go, as far as you wanted with an analog recording, as long as you provide enough room to record all those little bits of information, the higher frequencies. So that's with analog. You could, as fast as you could run a tape, that's about how high frequencies you're going to get, but there's still going to be a limit. And with digital, well, you could sample at ridiculously high frequencies and ridiculously high sample bit depths, 32-bit, 64-bit, which I don't think exists. And you could get unbelievably high frequencies out of digital, but there's still going to be a limit at some point. It's just not possible to record infinite frequencies on anything, whether it's analog or digital. So that statement is 48 kilohertz, 31 can capture frequencies. And you also have to realize, okay, so he did mention, what we can hear. Why should we talk about stuff we can't hear? What's the sense in recording sounds that we can't hear anyway? So, to me, it's not practical to talk about frequencies above 25 kilohertz, let's just say. Okay. So, why don't we stay within our capabilities as humans? And, we don't need to record things at 50 kilohertz or anything like that because we can't hear them. So why do it? It's like using paint that you can't see. Why bother? You can't see it, so why use it, right? So there's that. All right. And as far as the noise floor goes, again, if you use, say, 64-bit depth, how many decibels is that going to be as far as the noise floor goes? I can't do the math in my head right now, but 32, 24 is like 150 something. 32, I don't know what it is. It's getting to the point where you could never sit in a room and hear all of that dynamic range. It's not possible. You could have the quietest room in the world and hear 1 dB and then go up to 150 dB, and you just can't. You'd be deaf. Your ears, you can't handle that. So again, why don't we stay within our capabilities as humans? There's no sense talking about things that we're not capable of hearing. We can't hear a dog whistle, so we don't use them on the street to stop traffic, right? Let's deal with things that we can actually perceive and talk about those. But in theory, everything has a limit, analog or digital. It's just it's how the limit is approached that is different between the two. Digital being bang, it's finished. Analog sort of cuts off slowly until it dies, and then that's the end of it. All right. Okay. This one is from Sam H488. Sam asks, what is the best way to fix inner groove distortion other than aligning your cartridge, cleaning your record or stylus? Okay. What's the best way? Without cleaning your records or your stylus and without aligning your cartridge? There isn't one. There we go. Next question. No, just kidding. Look, no, you can't, you have to do those things. You can't expect to drive a car without a steering wheel. All right. It's just, you have to at least align the cartridge properly. So if you have a record player that you can't align the cartridge, well, then you can't align the cartridge. I mean, that's it. But you can clean the record and the stylus. So at least do those things. I mean, why would you not want to do any of those things? I'm not sure. Intergroove distortion is, there's a few different reasons why it happens, but the main reason why it happens, there's actually two main reasons in my mind. One of them is the cartridge alignment. If the cartridge is crooked, then especially with certain kinds of styli, it's not, the stylus isn't going to fit in between the little vibrations properly, and it's just going to distort. It's just as simple as that. We can get into all kinds of physical things and whatnot, but if the cartridge is not straight in the groove, like if the stylus isn't straight, going down the groove straight, especially if it's a elliptical stylus or above, then you're going to get distortion, and it can get pretty bad. Okay, so that has to be done. It just does in order to get the best sound. That's one of the main causes of intergroove distortion. The other main cause of intergroove distortion is the type of stylus you're using. Some stylus are bigger than others. Like an elliptical stylus. Let's say a conical stylus. If you take a phono cartridge and you look straight on to the stylus, I mean, let's say this is the tone arm, right? And this is the cartridge, and here's the stylus like that, right? Okay. And you're looking straight on like this, right? A conical stylus is going to be round. It's shaped like a cone, but if you look on it, point on, it's round, right? Same with a spherical stylus. It's got a round diameter around it. So now an elliptical stylus is more oval shaped like this, right? And so in other words, again, looking straight at the stylus, straight at the point of the stylus, you're going to see an elliptical shape more like this. So that is it's the right width to fit in the groove, but it's a little bit smaller front to back so that it can fit into those smaller vibrations a little bit better. Now, when you go up into a microline or a microlinear, whichever way you call that, or those kinds of styluses, what's the Shibata, then they're really like they're not round, they're not elliptical, they're more like this. They really get small. They're still the same side to side, but the front to back is very small, and that can really get into those smaller vibrations really, really well. So when you get to the inner part of the record, towards the label, those little vibrations on those grooves get closer and closer together because there's less velocity, and as you get closer to the center, so they get closer together. And if you have a nice small stylus like one of those nice ones I just mentioned with the more elliptical shape to them, or the microline, then you're going to be able to fit, the stylus is going to fit better into those smaller passages, and it's going to track them much better. So the type of stylus, you can align your turntable until the cows come home. And if you're running just a standard elliptical or a spherical or a conical cartridge, you probably won't eliminate the intergroove distortion fully. Okay? So alignment and a good cartridge with a good stylus will get you pretty darn almost close to no intergroove distortion at all. Hope that helps. Okay. This one's from Wayne6707, and Wayne asks, "Hey, great to see you back. Is there any way you can find out what weight your cartridge should be without the cartridge info? Thanks." Okay, this is the last one I'm going to be able to do because this video is getting really long. I got 4 more questions after this. I'll cover them in another video soon. The next video out will be the Fluence turntable that I got. Okay, we're going to talk about that. All right, so this is, you found an old cartridge somewhere in a drawer, and you don't know any specs on it. You want to put it on your turntable and run it, and you don't know the stylus pressure. Okay, well, if you haven't already done these things, here's what you do. Try to look it up. Does it have a name on it? Do you know what kind of cartridge it is? Is it just an orphan with no name on it, nothing? So you don't know what it is? Well, use that Google imaging thing. Your phone has it probably. There's a little Google search, there's a little camera there. And use that to try to recognize, see if Google can do a search and recognize what cartridge that is. It might come up and tell you, oh, that's a Shure V whatever, right? So, and once you know the model number of the cartridge, then you can look up specs on it. Or if you can't find any specs, maybe you can ask some people online. The average stylus pressure of a moving magnet cartridge is about, well, it's between 1.5 and 2.5 grams. So you could start at 2 grams and go lighter, one little bit at a time, and just listen. Get something with a lot of sibilants, okay, a lot of S's in it, and start dialing back the stylus pressure from 2 a little bit until you start hearing that sibilance come up. Then stop and move it forward a little bit, back to 2 again. And the other thing, you don't want to run it too heavy, because then the cartridge is going to start bottoming out on the vinyl, right? So you don't want, when you put the stylus down on the record, you don't want it to like completely like, almost bend it right up to the thing. So in that way, you could sort of guess. And keep in mind something here. If you're playing a record that's sort of warped, the stylus pressure changes with every revolution of that record. So as the record moves, if the record's moving up and down like this as it spins around, when it's moving up, the stylus pressure increases. When it's moving down, the stylus pressure decreases. So that's why it's always a good idea to set your stylus pressure somewhere in between the two, the highest and lowest that's recommended, because it's going to waver depending on the record that you're playing, and the warp in the record. So yeah, it's always going to change a little bit. So setting it at around 2 and sort of playing with it from there might be a good idea. Or else, try to look it up and see if you can find some specs on it, and get that dialed in the best you can. Okay, or if it came with your turntable, maybe find a manual for the turntable, and it might give you some setup instructions that might tell you how to set up the tone arm in the cartridge. In which case, you might find out from that how to set your stylus pressure. Okay, that's it for today, folks. Thank you for watching. I don't want this to be too long, but I will be back with more questions and the turntable that I got from Fluence. It's a fabulous turntable. I want to talk to you all about it in the next video. Hey, folks, listen. If you were born in 1933, you're 45 in 1978. If you were born in 33, you're 45 in 78. Do the math. It works. Trust me. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll see you next time real soon. Don't forget, vinyl, it's final. It's final. Thank you, guys. See you soon. Bye-bye.